Okay, hey Cancer, so let's get into your fashion and your aesthetics, and we're gonna see if you dress like your zodiac sign. I will give the really important disclaimer that I base this information off of Cancer Sun, of course, but also Cancer Venus and Mars, as well as Moon and Rising. I found that Venus and Mars especially really shows someone's style and how they dress, even more so than the Sun sign. So if you're watching this and you're a Cancer Sun, check your Venus and Mars, and you might want to watch the aesthetic video that corresponds with your Venus and Mars too. Okay, so let's just get into it. Now, before we get into it, tell me down below in 3 words, how would you describe your personal style? And keep those 3 words in mind, because by the end of this video, we're gonna see if that description matches up with the description I'm about to give you guys, and if there's any overlap or consistency with this Cancer aesthetic and fashion sense. Okay, so let's get started. Now, I had a lot of fun researching Cancer aesthetics and style because at first I couldn't really think of what a Cancer aesthetic would look like. It didn't really pop up into my head right away, but after looking at many examples, I definitely found consistent themes and patterns. So I'm going to share with you guys what those are and really share with you the consistent clothing items you guys tend to wear, the colors, the aesthetic, the overall vibe of how you dress. So first things first, I named you guys and your aesthetic the vintage wifey aesthetic. So the name really speaks for itself, and we're really going to get into what that name even comes from and how I really got it from the aesthetic I found with you guys. But first, let's talk about the overall themes I found with Cancer women and how they dress. So right away, what I found was that you guys dress in a very simple way, a very clean cut way. It isn't too complex. Like, the way you dress isn't too outrageous. I noticed overall there's this very like wifey aesthetic and looking very clean cut. Also, I noticed too, with a lot of Cancer placements, you dress in this almost sort of vintage way. It's almost like you dress almost like the 60s or 50s. It wasn't too trendy. I really noticed the way you guys dressed isn't overwhelmingly trendy. I noticed it was more kind of throwback, like I said, sort of like that vintage wifey type of vibe. And some of the clothes I notice you guys often wear is definitely a white button down. Like, that was a very consistent clothing item a lot of Cancers wore. And that's another thing I tend to notice with Cancer women, is that you guys wear full coverage pieces, if that makes sense. So instead of wearing like a crop top or really small skirt or really small dress, you guys wore like a full length version of that, if that makes sense. And I feel like it plays into that very vintage vibe. And a lot of the Cancer women I found, it was almost hard to find pictures of them where they're wearing very skimpy clothing or wearing very cropped clothing or clothing that was very revealing. I noticed revealing clothing wasn't a huge theme with Cancer women, and it almost had this kind of throwback vintage vibe of wearing full button downs or full pants or trousers, or wearing clothes that are a little bit masculine but kind of feminine at the same time. You guys kind of played with that sort of androgynous vibe in some cases too. And I will say some words to describe your style would definitely be very elegant, very simple, classic. I would say overall it's very clean cut. It's not too complex. There's not a lot of patterns and intricate designs and textures and cropped this and distressed that. I feel like it was very clean cut, full garments, nothing too revealing. That's overall the vibe and theme I got from you guys. So let's talk about something really startling I found, something that almost shocked me when I found out this consistent pattern with a lot of Cancer placement women. So this consistent theme and pattern I found, it really ties back to this vintage aesthetic, right? Wearing things that seem kind of almost from another decade. And almost every single Cancer girl that I looked into either had a picture, a photo shoot, or overall vibe of that vintage Hollywood aesthetic. You guys already know the queen of this is Lana Del Rey. I will say Lana Del Rey is like the Cancer women aesthetic mascot. Now, Lana does have Cancer Sun and Mars, so she does have that heavy Cancer influence, But of course, she's known for that pinup Hollywood classic glamour look. And I noticed every single other Cancer woman had either a photo shoot or picture with that same look. And as you guys can see in the pictures, Aaliyah J is a good example. She's a Cancer. Carrie Shea, Cancer Venus. Meghan Markle is another great Cancer woman mascot of having that very classic vintage look. And let's talk about Meghan Markle for a second, because I feel like she's a really great example. Now, she has Cancer rising and Mars, and I feel like the way she dresses, obviously, given her lifestyle, she has to dress in a more professional sense, but I feel like that's very on par with the Cancer aesthetic. It's almost like, you know, Meghan Markle is literally a wife, and if we look at pictures of her, she looks like almost like Jackie Kennedy, like that sort of vintage vibe. Lana Del Rey carries that same aesthetic. She's even done whole music videos that were themed on the 50s, so you get that very 50s classic wife vibe. Also Lucy Hale. Zendaya was another big example. Now Zendaya has Cancer, Venus, and Mars, and she's had multiple photo shoots with that classic vintage vibe. She's had photo shoots, I think she did a campaign where it was like the whole campaign was like 70s, and another photo shoot that was like classic Hollywood. And Selena Gomez is also another good example. Selena Gomez, of course, as of late has been wearing a very vintage look. So all of these women at one point in their career or sometime in their life has channeled another decade in their fashion sense, has worn something from another decade, whether it be 50s, 60s, 70s were the most prominent decades I saw with Cancer women. And just channeling that in their outfits on a regular basis tends to be a huge trend. And I noticed that they can very much pull it off very well. They can pull it off to the point where you don't really, like, it's not like you look outdated. It's not like you look older than you are. It's not like you look aged. I really feel like Cancer women have this special talent of channeling older generations in their outfits and pulling it off very flawlessly. And it's almost like when Cancer women dress in a vintage way, people flock to that. It's almost like when they dress too trendy, it kind of seems off. But when they dress in that more vintage, classic, vintage wifey look, I noticed that they're really praised for it, and it tends to be kind of like iconic. So if you think about, like, you know, Lana Del Rey, she has that iconic, it's almost like she's known for that like classic pinup look. Selena Gomez lately has been wearing that classic, you know, vintage look that looks very 70s. Even like Meghan Markle having that classic look, and Zendaya has that classic look in some of her photo shoots as well. So we can see that vintage vibe is really strong with Cancer women, and you guys pull it off so well. So let's talk about the starter pack, or the uniform for Cancer women, and what I feel like almost every Cancer woman has in their wardrobe. So right away, I definitely feel like you guys have a white button down. That's another theme I noticed too. I don't know if I said this, but Cancer women tend to wear a lot of white. In general, you guys wear very solid colors, not too many patterns, but you guys tend to wear a lot of white. And another part of your starter pack would definitely be maybe like a romantic top, a classic top, a top that looks kind of vintage. I know corsets are very in style now, and I feel like Cancer women would wear, you know, that kind of vintage look because the corset is very vintage. Another theme in your wardrobe might be a red lip. At some point, I feel like Cancer women will wear like a red lip, and it looks very stunning on them. It looks like very classic Hollywood glamour type of look. So overall, I would say your starter pack or uniform would be something white, a button down, something structured, a red lip. And then when it comes to shoes, I didn't really see a huge emphasis on shoes, so that can kind of be, you know, interchangeable with what you have in your wardrobe. Overall, that's the uniform I would give you guys. And I'd also love to know, what are some of the stores you guys shop at, just so we can see if there's like a pattern with like your zodiac sign, and if you guys shop at the same places. Also message me on Instagram if you feel like your aesthetic matches the aesthetic in this video, because I'm gonna post some real life subscriber examples, because I'd love to see this aesthetic and fashion sense play out in real life. So message me on Instagram at AstroKit if you feel like your aesthetic matches this one. Also subscribe to my channel because you don't want to miss the next video, and I will see you guys in my next video.